Ajay's alarm buzzed, cutting through the early morning quiet of his Bangalore apartment. He groggily reached out, silencing it with a groan. Another day awaited him, a whirlwind of photo shoots, casting calls, and networking in the glamorous yet grueling world of modelling. As he got out of bed, he felt the familiar ache in his muscles, a reminder of the demanding routines and expectations that came with his profession. Yet, beneath the surface, there lay a deeper exhaustion, one that had little to do with his career. Ajay's apartment was spacious, reflecting his success. Large glass windows overlooked the bustling city below, capturing both the vibrancy and chaos of Bangalore. It was modern, impeccably decorated, with no trace of the life he truly lived within these walls. He shared the space with his elder brother, Arun, a man of quiet resilience. Arun had been a father figure to Ajay after their parents passed, but life had not been kind to him. A bitter divorce left Arun broken and detached, seeking solace in books and late-night walks. Despite his own pain, he remained Ajay's steadfast anchor, guiding him through the challenges of life with compassion and wisdom. Ajay moved through the morning on autopilot. He slipped into the persona of the confident model, flashing practiced smiles, striking poses for the camera, and offering carefully curated responses during interviews. The world saw a man who had it all: fame, fortune, and a career that many could only dream of. But as the day wore on, Ajay counted down the hours until he could return home, to his sanctuary, to the one place where he could shed the weight of expectations and become himself. By evening, Ajay stepped back into his apartment, exhausted but filled with anticipation. Arun was still out, likely at one of his favourite cafes or immersed in a book at the park. Ajay relished the quiet, locking the door behind him with a soft click. The transformation began. He walked into a hidden room, carefully tucked away from view, a space dedicated solely to his secret. It was a world within a world, adorned with ornate mirrors, traditional South Indian jewellery, and a collection of sarees in every shade and texture imaginable. Ajay ran his fingers over the soft silk of his favourite saree, deep red with intricate gold embroidery. Today, it called to him. The transformation was almost ritualistic. He began by wrapping the saree around himself, each pleat meticulously arranged, every fold precise. He tugged the palu over his shoulder, letting it cascade down his back with practiced grace. His hands moved with care, adjusting the tight, low-cut blouse that clung to his torso, accentuating his carefully sculpted feminine form. Padded hips and realistic breast forms completed the illusion, creating an hourglass silhouette that even he marvelled at. Ajay's transformation into the persona of a traditional South Indian housewife was nothing short of a masterpiece. He stood in front of the mirror, admiring his reflection with a mixture of pride, relief, and vulnerability. The silk sari he wore was a deep red, shimmering in the dim light of the room, with intricate gold zari work that danced along the borders. Each pleat was crisp, ironed and folded with precise care, cascading down from his waist and wrapping gracefully around his slender form. The palu, a rich display of embroidery, was draped elegantly over his shoulder, flowing down his back with a regal flair. It wasn't merely clothing, it was a tapestry of self-expression, and it enveloped him like a warm embrace. The blouse beneath the sari was form-fitting, designed to accentuate his carefully crafted feminine shape. It dipped daringly at the back, revealing smooth, unblemished skin before coming together with delicate strings tied neatly. The low-cut neckline highlighted his collarbone, a soft curve that further deepened his immersion into his chosen role. Realistic breast forms filled out the blouse, lending him a full, natural-looking cleavages. His padded hips created an hourglass silhouette that epitomized the essence of femininity, giving him the unmistakable look of a traditional housewife. Ajay paid equal attention to every detail. Around his neck, a delicate Mangal sutra rested between his natural-looking cleavages, its golden beads catching the light as he moved. It symbolized more than just the identity of a married woman. It was a powerful emblem of the life he inhabited in his moments of self-expression. His wrists jingled with glass bangles in red and gold, each movement setting off a soft, melodious chime that completed the illusion. His ears were adorned with elaborate jhumkas dangling earrings that framed his face and swayed gently whenever he moved his head. His wig was a crowning touch, long, silky, and styled into a simple, loose bun at the nape of his neck. Strands of hair framed his face, adding a touch of casual elegance. The wig blended seamlessly with his hairline, looking impossibly real. Soft kajal lined his eyes, accentuating their depth and adding a hint of mystery. A touch of blush coloured his cheeks. A small bindi adorned his forehead, and a smudge of kumkum rested above it, a final affirmation of his carefully curated identity. From head to toe, Ajay radiated grace. His movements had become more fluid, his gestures softer, and his entire posture shifted to match the persona he now embodied. He moved around the apartment with an innate poise, each step whispering confidence and serenity, as if he had spent a lifetime walking in these shoes. The fantasy shattered abruptly. The creak of the front door pierced the silence, and Ajay's heart stopped. He turned, his sari rustling as he moved, and saw Arun standing in the doorway. The grocery bags in his hands fell to the floor with a thud, cans rolling across the room. Arun's face was a mask of shock and disbelief. Time seemed to freeze. Ajay stood rooted to the spot, every instinct screaming at him to run, to hide, to do anything but face what was happening. His brother's eyes travelled over him, taking in every detail: the sari, the jewellery, the makeup, the Mangalsutra. The silence stretched on, suffocating them both. When Arun walked in, the intricate illusion shattered in an instant. Ajay turned to face him, his heart hammering in his chest. Time seemed to slow as his brother's eyes travelled down his transformed form. First, Arun's gaze lingered on the vibrant red sari, its pleats fanning out at Ajay's waist with the precision of a practiced hand. His eyes moved to the blouse, taking in the low-cut neckline, the realistic fullness of his chest, and the strings that tied at the back, barely visible beneath the cascading pallu. Arun's gaze moved further, catching the shimmer of the Mangalsutra, its weight sitting delicately at Ajay's cleavages. The bangles on his wrists sparkled under the light as Ajay's hands trembled. Arun's eyes moved downward, taking in the slim waist and flawless midriff, accentuated by the padded hips that created a flawless feminine silhouette. The pleats of the sari wrapped snugly around Ajay's lower body, flowing into the floor with a perfect blend of elegance and sensuality. Finally, Arun's gaze rested on Ajay's bare feet, adorned with delicate toe rings and a subtle coating of alta, a traditional red dye applied to the feet during ceremonies. The entirety of Ajay's form stood before him, a painstakingly crafted embodiment of a woman whose existence was both real and unreal. Arun took in every detail: the soft sway of the sari's fabric, the jingle of bangles, the faint aroma of jasmine from the floral hair accessory, and the poised stance that belied Ajay's inner turmoil. To the untrained eye, Ajay was not a man in costume. He was a womaner, housewife graceful, dignified, and heartbreakingly vulnerable in this raw, unexpected moment. The room felt heavy, as if even the air had frozen in place, holding its breath. Ajay's vision blurred with unshed tears as he stood there, exposed and fragile. Arun's stunned gaze held a mix of confusion, sadness, and something else that Ajay couldn't quite place. Whatever was about to happen next, one thing was certain: there was no going back. Arun's POV, Arun's initial reaction, was a mix of surprise and confusion. He had come home expecting to find his brother Ajay alone, perhaps cooking dinner or relaxing after a long day. Instead, there was a woman in their apartment, a woman whose presence seemed so strikingly real, so deeply authentic, that Arun couldn't reconcile it with the reality of their shared bachelor space. For a fleeting moment, he even wondered if Ajay had invited someone over and forgotten to mention it. But why would she be dressed this way, in such traditional attire? And why was she here alone? He cleared his throat, trying to mask his confusion, and took a hesitant step forward. "Excuse me," he began, his voice trailing off as the woman turned to face him fully. Her movements were soft and deliberate. She adjusted the pallu of her sari with a grace that made the bangles on her wrists chime softly. Arun's eyes travelled downward, taking in every detail: the curve of her hips emphasised by the sari's pleats, the gentle sway of her body as she moved, and even the delicate toe rings glinting on her bare feet. Everything about her was perfect, right down to the faint aroma of jasmine that lingered in the air. For a moment, Arun was convinced that he had walked into a dream, that this woman was real and tangible, a wife waiting for her husband, perhaps, or a guest caught in a moment of solitude. He opened his mouth to speak again, but then his gaze caught something: a small, familiar tattoo peeking out from beneath the blouse's neckline, at the nape of her neck. It was a tiny symbol, a design that Ajay had gotten during their college days, a symbol that marked a bond between brothers, something only the two of them shared. Arun's breath caught in his throat. Disbelief warred with recognition as he took a closer look. He studied the curve of the woman's jawline, the set of her shoulders, and the slight tremor in her hands as she adjusted her saree. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't a guest. The woman standing before him, who had so convincingly embodied a married South Indian housewife, was none other than his brother Ajay. Arun's eyes widened, and he stumbled backward, the impact of the truth settling heavily on his chest. The bangles, the saree, the flawless makeup, the gentle smile that had faded into uncertainty, it was all Ajay. The intricate layers of femininity peeled away in his mind, replaced by the memory of his younger brother, the model who had always been so confident, so sure of himself. Arun's heart pounded as he tried to reconcile the two images. Ajay, the successful professional model, and Ajay, the woman who stood before him now, vulnerable and exposed. Ajay? Arun whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The single word broke the heavy silence that had enveloped the room. Ajay's eyes filled with tears and he nodded, unable to speak. The two brothers stared at each other, one stripped bare by the discovery, the other overwhelmed by the weight of being seen for who he truly was. In that moment, everything changed. The secret was out, and there was no way to put it back. Arc 2. Fighting Lust. Ajay expected lot how and why from. But all he saw in Arun's gaze is pure lust. Ajay took a measured step forward, his every movement fluid, almost hypnotic in its grace. The air between them seemed to crackle with a quiet intensity, the space narrowing until it felt as though the world had shrunk to this singular moment, just him and Arun. The softness of his saree, its deep maroon hue shimmering under the soft lighting, swirled around his legs as he approached, each step purposeful, yet ethereal. His fingers twitched ever so slightly, the gentle sway of the fabric mimicking the tension in the air between them. Arun stood frozen, eyes wide and unblinking, unable to tear himself away from Ajay's transformation. His brother, the man he had always known, was now a vision of femininity he had never expected. Ajay's long hair styled in loose hair bun, framing his face with delicate strands that caught the light like strands of gold. His makeup was subtle, yet it accentuated the sharpness of his features. Dark, smoky eyes, soft pink lips, high cheekbones, all enhanced with the expert hand of a skilled makeup artist. The gold embroidery of the blouse gleamed against his skin, the rich colours of the saree reflecting off the mirror and enhancing his beauty, making him look like something out of a dream. Ajay looked nothing like the brother Arun had known for years. He was a vision, a living, breathing contradiction to everything that Arun's mind had been trained to believe. Ajay's voice broke through Arun's trance, soft and gentle, yet firm, like a whisper through the storm of emotions swirling within Arun's chest. "It's not about becoming someone else, Arun," Ajay said, his tone calm but carrying a depth of meaning. "This is just me. This is another part of who I am." The words hung in the air, their weight settling heavily in Arun's heart. Arun's breath hitched, his chest tightening, as if the world had taken on a suffocating pressure. His gaze was fixed on Ajay's form, on the undeniable beauty in front of him. He knew what cross-dressing is. He didn't see a man in dress. He saw a goddess, his dream girl. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion, of thoughts that clashed violently against one another. Ajay was his brother, the same man who had fought beside him, laughed with him, and been his rock. And yet, here he was standing before him, as the epitome of everything Arun had secretly longed for, the embodiment of his deepest desires, of the woman he had always dreamed of, but never thought could be real. The conflicting emotions inside Arun caused a painful ache in his chest, one that was as much about longing as it was about guilt. The attraction he felt was undeniable, an electric pull that made it difficult to breathe, yet it felt so wrong because Ajay was his brother. Arun could feel his pulse quicken, his thoughts scattering as his gaze lingered on Ajay's form, his realistic cleavages, sexy-looking navel, wide hips, curvy waist and wide hips, his features softening under the weight of the saree. The way it clung to Ajay's body, the fluidity in his movements, the grace with which he carried himself, it was hypnotic, intoxicating, and yet it tore at Arun's very soul. He didn't want to feel this way, but the truth was, it was hard to deny the truth his body was betraying. Ajay, sensing the conflict in Arun's eyes, knew this moment would not be easy. He had anticipated the discomfort, the confusion that would flood Arun's heart. It wasn't just about the clothes, the makeup, or the feminine persona he was presenting. It was about something deeper, something that lay beneath the surface of their relationship. Ajay needed Arun to understand that this wasn't a mask. This wasn't some fabricated persona. This was another piece of who he was, a part of his identity that he had kept hidden, until now. I know this is hard for you, Ajay's voice softened, as he stepped back slightly, giving Arun space, but still maintaining the intimate proximity. You don't have to understand it all at once, but I need you to know this, Arun. He paused, his eyes searching Arun's face, trying to convey everything he felt in that single, raw moment. What you see right now, it's just a costume. It's just a way for me to express a side of myself. But beneath all of this, I am still your brother. Arun's breath caught in his throat as the weight of Ajay's words settled over him. His eyes widened, as though trying to comprehend the complexity of the situation. He couldn't tear his gaze away from Ajay, but the confusion this knot of emotions made his throat tighten. He had always known his brother as a man, but now Ajay was something else entirely. Someone else who both terrified and fascinated him. His voice, barely above a whisper, finally escaped his lips. But when I look at you, it's hard. You look like my dream woman, the woman I've always imagined, but I know you're not. You're Ajay. Ajay's expression softened in understanding, a tender smile crossing his lips. He took a step closer, the air between them thick with emotion, and reached out a hand, gently cupping Arun's face. The soft brush of his fingers against Arun's skin felt like a grounding force, a reminder of who Ajay truly was, despite the transformation. Ajay's touch was warm, reassuring. I know, Arun, he said, his voice low and steady, filled with empathy. I get it, this isn't easy. But look at me. He tilted Arun's face upward, their eyes locking in an intimate, almost vulnerable moment. I am still your brother. This doesn't change that. Arun closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. The emotions within him raged confusion, lust, guilt, love, and he wasn't sure how to make sense of any of it. But Ajay was right. Beneath the makeup, beneath the sari, it was still the same person. The same brother who had always stood by him, who had laughed with him and fought beside him. It didn't matter what he was wearing. Ajay was still his brother. Taking a deep breath, Ajay slowly began to undo the sari. The process was slow, deliberate. The delicate fabric seemed to glide off his body, inch by inch, as if shedding not just the layers of his costume, but also the confusion that had settled between them. The gold embroidery along the blouse sparkled briefly before it too came undone, revealing the realistic-looking breast forms, which firm and stiff. Arun's eyes widening, looking at those breasts on his brother. Ajay smiled and removed the breast form like a t-shirt. Next, the shapely petticoat slipped away from his body with a fluid motion, as though the fabric itself was reluctant to part with its connection to this feminine form. Last came off the long hair wig. Ajay washed off his makeup and removed the jewellery. Each layer removed revealed more of Ajay the brother Arun had always known. Beneath the sari, Ajay's wore simple t-shirt and shorts, simple and unassuming. The transformation had been delicate, almost magical. The clothes, the makeup, they were just a shell, a costume he had used to express this hidden part of himself. But inside, he was the same person he had always been. When Ajay finally stood before Arun in his familiar attire, his true self revealed, a quiet silence settled between them. The weight of the moment hung in the air, and Arun, finally able to breathe again, looked at his brother with a mixture of relief and sadness. The person in front of him was still Ajay, the same man who had always been there for him, the same person he had always known. Ajay smiled softly, his hand resting on Arun's shoulder. This is who I am, Arun. Not the clothes, not the makeup. I'm still your brother, and that's never going to change. Arun nodded slowly, his heart still beating in a strange rhythm. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but he knew that he had witnessed something profound, something that would change the way he saw his brother, and perhaps change the way he saw himself too. The two stood there for a long moment, neither of them speaking, as the weight of their shared silence filled the room. The world outside seemed distant, irrelevant. It was just the two of them, standing together, trying to make sense of everything that had just transpired. Arc 3. The conversation, the silence, stretched between them like an unspoken bond, heavy, but not oppressive. Arun's chest felt tight again, but this time, it wasn't from confusion. It was a deep, emotional Achaea longing for clarity, for resolution. He glanced at Ajay, standing there, no longer dressed in the sari, but still holding an aura of quiet strength. His brother was there, his true self revealed, and yet something had shifted. Arun couldn't quite explain it, but the entire evening had felt like stepping into unknown territory. Ajay's smile was soft, reassuring. It wasn't the kind of smile that said everything was okay, because things weren't, not yet, but it was the kind of smile that communicated understanding, and maybe just a little bit of hope. Arun took a deep breath and spoke, his voice still shaky, though more resolute than before. "I don't know what to feel right now," he admitted, his gaze drifting to the floor for a moment before meeting Ajay's eyes again. "But I know this. I don't want you to hide who you are, He faltered, the words stumbling over each other. "I need time to understand, to make sense of all this. You're my brother. I love you. But I've never thought of you this way before." Ajay nodded, as though he had anticipated these words. "I get it, Arun," he said quietly. "I never expected you to just accept everything overnight. I didn't expect you to fully understand it all at once, but I had to show you. I had to be honest about who I am, no matter how complicated or uncomfortable it might make things between us." Arun felt the weight of his words. He had to admit, part of him was relieved that Ajay wasn't pushing him to accept it all right now, wasn't demanding that he understand it instantly. The idea of his brother, the man who had always been his anchor, being someone he never thought he'd have to confront in this way, it was a lot to process. Ajay's hand reached up, a tentative touch on Arun's shoulder. It was as if Ajay was grounding him, reminding him that, despite everything, they were still connected, still bound by something deeper than just appearances or fleeting emotions. "I don't want you to be confused. I don't want to make things harder for you," Ajay said softly, his eyes sincere. "But I also need you to understand that I'm not going to hide this part of myself anymore. I've spent so long suppressing it. For you, for everyone. But it's not something I can keep inside anymore. And I'm not asking you to be okay with it right away. I just want you to know that no matter how complicated this gets, no matter how confusing, I'm still your brother. You're still my family." The finality in Ajay's words hung in the air. Arun felt the weight of the decision that had been made, one that neither of them could turn back from. It was a recognition that, no matter the difficulties ahead, they were both going to have to evolve in their relationship. Ajay had shown him something that had left Arun in a storm of emotions, something he wasn't sure he was ready to fully accept. But at least Ajay had been honest. At least there was no more hiding. "Okay," Arun said, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with a quiet determination. I'll try to understand. Just give me time." Ajay's face softened, a quiet relief crossing his features. He didn't push Arun to say anything more, knowing full well that this wasn't something that could be fixed in a single conversation. There was no easy resolution. This was just the first step in an ongoing journey that neither of them knew how it would end. Ajay took another step back, his expression now thoughtful. "I won't force you to meet her again, the feminine side of me. I won't push you into something you're not ready for. But I need you to know, Arun, that no matter what happens between us, no matter how awkward or distant things get you'll always be my brother. And this side of me doesn't change that." The words seemed to settle within Arun like a soothing balm, but the truth was, nothing about this situation was easy. The idea of seeing Ajay as a woman, as someone entirely different from the brother he had always known, was too much for Arun to process right now. The emotions still churned inside of him like a storm that hadn't yet cleared. But Ajay was giving him space to breathe, to understand, and to process. "I don't want to lose you," Arun murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to be confused every time I see you in those clothes, but I don't want you to be someone you're not either." Ajay stepped forward again, his hand finding Arun's, offering comfort in the simplest way he knew how. "You won't lose me, Arun," he assured him, squeezing his hand gently. "You'll never lose me, and I'll never ask you to be something you're not either." Arun looked at his brother, still so unfamiliar in his femininity, but undeniably the same person he had known for all his life. His heart was a jumble of emotions, love, confusion, fear, but beneath it all, there was one constant truth. This was his brother, the same brother, who had always been there for him. And despite everything, that hadn't changed. The two brothers stood in the quiet of the room, the air thick with uncertainty and raw emotion, but also with an unspoken understanding. There were no more words for now, no answers, no solutions, just a shared moment in which the world outside seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them standing there, trying to figure out the next step. Eventually, Ajay spoke, his voice low but filled with determination. "We'll get through this, Arun. I promise you that." He paused, then added softly, "One step at a time." Arun nodded, his grip on Ajay's hand tightening just a little. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For now, it was enough. As the night grew deeper, both brothers knew that the journey they were on would be difficult, perhaps painful at times, but they would walk it together. The transformation Ajay had undergone wasn't just external, it was a shift that ran deep, a change that neither of them could ignore. But at the heart of it all, they were still family. And that, at least, was a place to start. After a brief silence, "You're right," Arun said, his voice quiet but steady. "I do need time. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose the brother I've always had. So, I'll try. I'll try to understand. Just don't shut me out, Ajay." Ajay's eyes softened as he stepped forward again, placing a gentle hand on Arun's shoulder. "I won't. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm not going to shut you out. You're my brother, Arun, and that's not going to change." The sincerity in his voice, the quiet understanding in his eyes, made something shift inside Arun. It didn't resolve everything, nothing could. Not yet. But it gave him a sense of peace. He wasn't alone in this. Ajay wasn't expecting him to figure it all out immediately. They would navigate this new territory together, step by step. Ajay's gaze flickered to the window, and he sighed softly. "I should probably get some rest. We've both had a long night, and I think we both need time to process everything." Arun nodded, his mind still racing, but with a sense of clarity slowly beginning to emerge. "Yeah, you're right. We both need to rest. But we'll talk again. Soon." Ajay gave a small, almost relieved smile. "Of course, we'll talk. Whenever you're ready." As Ajay made his way toward the small hallway leading to the bedroom, Arun watched him, still feeling the weight of everything they'd just shared. There was a part of him that still felt conflicted, still felt the lingering stirrings of attraction that he wasn't sure how to reconcile. But beneath all that confusion, there was a sense of relief. They had taken the first step. They had opened the door to a conversation that needed to happen, and no matter how difficult it was, they had started to walk down that path together. As Ajay disappeared into the bedroom, Arun lingered for a moment longer, his thoughts swirling. He knew that, in time, he would come to understand his brother's transformation. He didn't know how long it would take or how it would feel, but for now, he was willing to be patient, willing to accept the process, even if he couldn't make sense of it all in that moment. In the quiet of the house, with the dim light from the hallway spilling into the room, Arun finally allowed himself to sit down, his head in his hands. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain: the relationship between him and Ajay would never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe it was just the beginning of a deeper understanding, one that neither of them could predict, but both of them would have to work towards. And with that, Arun closed his eyes, letting the quiet envelop him. He didn't have all the answers, but for now, he had something just as important: his brother, still by his side, and a promise that they would face whatever came next together. 1 year later. A year had passed since the night that marked the beginning of a deep transformation in Arun and Ajay's relationship. The confusion, the emotional turmoil, and the difficulty of reconciling the image of the brother he had always known with the womanly figure that had stood before him seemed like distant memories now. Arun had come to terms with Ajay's crossdressing. Though it had been difficult at first, time had allowed him to see Ajay's feminine persona not as something foreign or uncomfortable, but as just another side of his brother aside that deserved acceptance and understanding. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden glow over the small apartment they shared. Arun stretched as he awoke, the familiar quiet of the morning filling the space. The clock on the wall read 7:30 am. Ajay was already up, as he always was, but there was no rush today. Today was another ordinary day in the life they had built together, and everything about it felt peaceful, comfortable, even. Arun had spent much of the last year adjusting to his brother's transformation, and today, it seemed as if that adjustment had come full circle. He had learned to see Ajay for who he truly was, no matter how he chose to express himself. There were still moments when his mind wandered back to the conflicting feelings of attraction he had once struggled with, but they had faded over time. Now, he saw his brother's cross-dressing for what it was, an expression of a part of Ajay that had always existed but had never been allowed to fully emerge. Ajay was no longer a source of confusion. He was just Ajay, his sister, in a sense, yet always his brother. Arun stood up and walked into the kitchen, where the sounds of clattering dishes greeted him. Ajay was already busy preparing breakfast, humming softly to himself as he moved around the kitchen. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling vegetables filled the room, and the warmth of the scene felt like a promise of another peaceful morning. It was a stark contrast to the discomfort Arun had once felt when seeing Ajay dressed as a woman. Now, it felt as natural as anything could. Ajay had fully embraced this side of himself, and it showed. Gone were the days of uncertainty or hesitation. His sensuality was now something Ajay wore like a second skin, but there was a sense of freedom to it too. He no longer hid behind it or treated it like something shameful. It was just another facet of his identity, and Arun, as difficult as it had come to understand that. Ajay stood at the stove, his movements fluid, graceful, and confident as he flipped a dosa onto the plate. Ajay's appearance that day was a striking blend of grace, sensuality, and tradition, perfectly embodying the role of a married woman while still retaining the essence of his own identity. It was a look that connected directly to the first arc, where he had first embraced the femininity that had once seemed so foreign and conflicted. Now, it felt natural. He was dressed in a sariya, a soft, rich fabric of deep maroon and gold, the colours blending seamlessly to reflect the elegance of the traditional yet modern woman he had become. The sari was draped with precision, the pleats falling neatly over his hips, accentuating the curves of his waist and highlighting his slender frame. The pallu was draped over his left shoulder, falling gracefully down his back and pooling just around his waist in an elegant cascade. Beneath the sari, the blouse he wore was tight and form-fitting, a deep, bold contrast to the softness of the fabric. The blouse was designed to hug his body, accentuating every curve of his torso. Its low-cut neckline dipped provocatively just above the swell of his chest, revealing a hint of the breast forms that added to the illusion of femininity he carried so effortlessly. The low-cut design exposed the delicate collarbones of his slender neck, and the slight tension in the fabric revealed just enough of his midriff, showcasing his toned waist. The blouse also had a low-back design, dipping dramatically to reveal the smooth expanse of his back, with only the thin straps of his blouse holding it in place. His exposed midriff was a focal point, his body language exuding sensuality, yet the modest drape of the sari kept it balanced with traditional grace. The tightness of the blouse brought attention to his shapely figure, its soft fabric stretching slightly as he moved, while the back revealed the elegant line of his spine. His posture was poised, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he were aware of the sensual energy his outfit projected, yet comfortable in it. The blouse's design highlighted not only his body, but also his newfound confidence, a confidence that grew from within, no longer just a performance, but a reflection of Ajay's internal journey of self-acceptance. The most striking feature, however, was the Mangal Sutra around his neck. The traditional symbol of marriage, the black beads and gold pendant hung delicately against his chest, the subtle weight of the chain marking the contrast between his traditional role as a married woman and the modern complexity of his identity. The Mangal Sutra was a sign of commitment, of both the woman Ajay presented to the world and the person he was inside. Its weight around his neck felt like both a responsibility and a sense of ownership over his own life choices. Ajay had completed his look with a pair of gold bangles adorning his wrist, adding a slight jingle as he moved. The soft shimmer of the gold against his skin drew attention to the delicate nature of his hands. His fingers, which once had been masculine, now seemed to be as soft and graceful as the rest of his figure. His feet were covered by soft sandals, the toes peeking out from beneath the sari as he walked. His hair was styled simply loose and effortlessly elegant. A loose hair bun sat at the back of his head, with soft tendrils of hair falling around his face in delicate waves. The hair bun itself was neat but not stiff. The loose waves and curls framed his face, accentuating his delicate features and giving him a soft, approachable look. The overall simplicity of his hairstyle worked in harmony with his sensual and elegant appearance, allowing his true nature to shine through, subtle but striking. His makeup was light but refined, the focus being on his eyes, which were accentuated with a touch of eyeliner and mascara. The result was a look that was soft yet powerful, delicate yet confident. The subtlety of his makeup enhanced the natural beauty of his features, making the entire look feel authentic and effortless. He wasn't trying to fit into anyone's expectations. He was simply being himself, wearing what felt right, expressing a side of himself that had always been there. The breast forms, the shapewear, the tight blouse, all of it was part of his journey to feel whole. It wasn't just about the costume. It was about the freedom to embrace his identity in every way that felt natural to him. Arun entered the kitchen quietly, watching Ajay for a moment before speaking. It had become routine for him to see his brother like this, now elegant, feminine, yet still unmistakably Ajay. What had once felt confusing and complicated now felt natural. Ajay was just being Ajay. "Good morning," Arun said, his voice soft but steady. He could already sense that the day would be just like any other. Ajay looked up and smiled warmly, his eyes twinkling with genuine happiness. "Morning, Arun. I made some breakfast. I thought you'd like some dosa today." Arun smiled back, though his gaze lingered for just a moment longer than usual. He hadn't realized how much he had become accustomed to this. He wasn't looking at a woman, not really. He was looking at Ajay, his brother, his sister, the person who had always been there for him, no matter the form they took. "Looks delicious," Arun replied, his voice easy, with none of the old tension that had once gripped him when he saw Ajay in this form. Ajay set the dosa plate down on the table and turned back to the stove to finish cooking. His movements were fluid, almost choreographed in their grace. Arun couldn't help but notice the way the sari moved with Ajay's body, the way the fabric clung to his form as he bent to tend to the cooking. He realized that, in some way, Ajay had always moved like this even before he had started cross-dressing. There was always something sensual about the way Ajay carried himself, something that was now expressed more openly. Ajay didn't seem to notice Arun's prolonged gaze. It was clear now that he had settled into this role of the housewife, of the woman who took care of the home with as much joy and pride as anyone could. It wasn't a performance anymore. It wasn't something Ajay did to confuse or provoke. It was just who he was. And Arun understood that now. He saw his brother in a way he never had before, his multifaceted, complex, and beautiful brother. Ajay returned to the table, his steps light and fluid. He sat across from Arun, folding his sari around his legs as he did so. There was no hesitation in his movements, no shame, just confidence. Ajay had found peace in his identity, and Arun had found peace in accepting it. For a long moment, the two brothers, sister, and brother sat together at the table, sharing a meal in comfortable silence. There was no awkwardness between them, no lingering confusion. They were simply two people who had learned to understand and accept each other. What had once been a source of conflict was now just another piece of their shared lives. Ajay's femininity, once a strange and difficult concept for Arun, had become just another part of his brother's essence. "I'm glad you're okay with this now," Ajay said quietly, his voice sincere. "I didn't want to pressure you, but I also couldn't hide this part of me anymore. It's who I am, Arun." Arun looked up, meeting his gaze. "I know," he said simply. I think I've come to understand that. You're still you. Whether you're dressed as a woman or a man, you're still my brother, and I love you. Nothing changes that." Ajay smiled, a deep, contented smile that reached his eyes. "I'm glad you understand," he said softly. "It means everything to me." The rest of the morning passed in a quiet, peaceful rhythm. Ajay finished the housework with a lightness to his movements, and Arun went about his day, content in the knowledge that they had both found a place of peace together. There would still be challenges ahead, but for now, the two of them had come to terms with something far more important: the understanding that love, acceptance, and family transcended gender, clothing, and any external expectations. Ajay, still in his sari, moved gracefully through their home. Arun watched him, and for the first time, he didn't feel confusion or discomfort. He saw his brother, his sister, the same person he had always known and loved, and that was enough. As he turned to leave the room, he could feel the eyes of Arun on him, but this time, there was no discomfort. There was no longer any confusion or hesitation in Arun's gaze. He had come to terms with it. All Ajay, in his married woman persona, was no longer something Arun feared or misunderstood. She was just his sister, just Ajay. And Ajay in turn had accepted himself fully, proud of the woman and the man that he was. Ajay stepped into the kitchen, continuing his daily housework without hesitation, moving fluidly as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The weight of the Mangal Sutra around his neck felt grounding, as if it was anchoring him to this me plus of peaceful clarity. His emits, as he cooked and cleaned, exuded a quiet confidence, the sensuality of his appearance no longer something he had to hide or apologize for. And for Arun, watching from the doorway, it was the most normal thing in the world too. The initial shock of Ajay's cross-dressing had faded into a deep understanding and acceptance. Ajay, as a woman, as a housewife, was still Ajay, his brother, his sister. They were the same person, and their bond was unshakable. In this moment, Ajay's appearance as a married woman, the tight blouse, the low-cut back, the sarili, wasn't about sensuality alone. It was about his freedom to express who he truly was. And for the first time, it felt like everything had fallen into place. The world, their world, had adjusted, and they had adjusted with it. Ajay's transformation was not just a physical change. It was an expression of he had always been, and now, in Futi, it felt like home.